Still writing. Come on, girls. Have you been down there? Okay. This is all for all of you? That's it? One? Because weaknesses have innovation potential. I would also look at opportunities that have innovation potential. I would probably not so much look at the threats, even though they have also quite a bit of innovation. And you know what the least important one is? Actually the strength at the moment, at least for the innovation potential. But they're the most important one for determining on whether things can be done here. So the strength, you know, the big market of India is a strength. It is also a threat, and actually equally an opportunity. Because a big market with such a big size could also be a problem. Because you have different segments. You have the Bombay segment or the Mumbai segment, and you have the rural area segment. You have quite a bit of different markets. Okay, so we will get back to this. Abhishek, can I ask you to just turn off the light here again? Thank you. Oh, in Germany call that a Nachzügler, one comes later. Okay, interesting enough too, if you look at it, is you have identified very few threats. We'll look through that later on. But one of the things that I don't know if anybody put it on there, I think a weakness of, personally I believe a weakness of the Indian healthcare system is that you don't have enough own manufacturing and own producers. You're very much dependent on others. But that's also an opportunity, isn't it? So I think that's really sad that a country that is so big, actually relatively wealthy, has so many educated people, has really not enough ideas on their own with respect to healthcare. And we'll get back to this when we talk about this reverse innovation, which I have identified already one time before. Okay, so now I'm going to start with maybe a little exciting part. I want to talk about exponential technologies. And exponential technologies that will have a huge impact on not only healthcare, but on the complete life. And now this picture comes back again, so I think I'll also give you the story behind it. So the story says, I'll read it to you. Former patient Ambrose Turner begins to understand how he has been given a second chance at life as cardiologist Sheila Shelby downloads his file and explains the chain of events that followed him to survive 40 years in an induced coma while the world's population was decimated. 2016. Very, very dark. And I also told it comes from Siemens. You can't read it, but you can actually download it. I will provide you the link. It's very funny when you see that these companies are actually playing these games and playing these stories. So, brings me to the point of future. Because these companies play with the future and they think about the future. And we are actually right now here, right? Sorry, right here. That's us today, right now. February 9th, 2:46 p.m. According to this clock, I think it's only 2:44. That's where we are right now. Now, do you know what's going to happen in the next couple of minutes? Not really, but you can imagine what happens, right? And you probably will be to 99% right. Do you know what's happening tomorrow? 1 month from now, 1 year from now, 5 years from now, 10. The ambiguity, the chance that you will be right will actually be, dramatically different from reality, probably. So there's all kinds of different futures. Unfortunately, you cannot really read it very well. But there is, this one is called the plausible future. This one is the probable future, a preferred future and a possible future. Possible future is, in 50 years, we're occupied by people from Alpha Centauri. Is that impossible? You don't know. Could be possible. Maybe unlikely, maybe improbable or implausible, but it's possible. So there's a lot of possible futures. I also told you or asked you to think about futures the way you want to have them, not the way that is plausible. Plausible is to have a robot in your system, and these are all the things that are quite likely to happen. Do you want that? So there's a discrepancy, but you also see that there is some cutover, right? So having said that, having known all these futures, what can you say about your own future? You want to work for a big company, that's what I already figured out. But this big company will tell you what the future will be based on their own understanding, based on what they want the future to be. Siemens, that's why Siemens did this other one, maybe not wants to have the future that way, but wants to be prepared for that future. So if you're not taking care of your own future, you will have to accept the fact that somebody else will give you the future. And you are the ones who determine your future, in general. And if you don't believe that you cannot change the future, then that's sad. You can change the future. So, excuse my language. I don't have a clue either what's going to happen. But I always believe it's good to have a plan and to have an idea and a wish of what the future should look like. And if you know that, then I work for it. If I don't work for it, then I will actually follow somebody else. So either I am the leader or I'm the one who follows the leader. Not saying that one is really completely wrong, but you could also be the one who leads to get a new future. Having said that, I want to give you some proof that we're actually living in an exponential world. And I've asked you before on one times to actually think back 5 years. And what most of you thought when they were looking at 10 years from now, they were projecting what could happen in the next years. Now, most of you are not old enough, but think back 15 years or 20 years. How many of us had cell phones in this room? Nobody. How many of us had a cloud account? Nobody. How many of us used Skype to call for free? Or Hangout or WhatsApp or whatever there is around? How many of you would have used these kind of devices 15 years ago for free? How many of you had a USB stick 15 years ago with 64 gigabyte on it for $3? I'm just giving you some examples. How many of you would have had a fixed line telephone at home and would have never been reachable, or with an answering machine only? There's so many examples when we can go back and see what has happened actually in 10 or 15 years, which you think is completely normal. It's accepted. You don't even think back anymore what happened. Just think back 2 or 3 years ago and think what has happened in the last 2 or 3 years. It's kind of like an accepted thing. So, in general, what we have seen, and that's also when you look at people who think a little forward in the future, there's always 3 types of truth faces. First one is, you are so silly, that will never happen. I mean, this is ridiculous, what you think. They are made fun of. And then 10 years later, when there's a certain amount of reality, then they're violently opposed. When we talk about AI, and you would have said 10, 15 years ago, or 20 years ago, what AI can do, what it has shown it can do today, you would have been laughed at. Now that it can do it, the doctors say, for example, who needs this? They are opposing it. The banks are opposing it. What do we need a bank for? What is the institution bank actually providing? What is it? I still didn't understand, sorry. Are they? When has the bank helped you the last time? They don't help me ever. The only thing they do for me is that they actually keep my money and allow me to transfer from left to right. So I have a bunch of money, and then I have to pay many, many, many people for it. So it's basically a medium of shifting and currency that you don't ever see because it's only there electronically anyway, from left to right. Think about blockchains. Think about any other technologies. Could they not do the same thing? What do we need a bank for? And I'm sure that the banks are the ones that are most worried about right now about the technological development, because they are the ones who are really just trying to sit on the money and distribute it and take a share of it. There's much easier ways to do it. There's no or very few banks in Africa. Money is actually kept on the mobile phone's user profile. They're doing a bank function. So this is phase number 2. It's violently opposed. Now we need banks always. When you talk to the bank guys in private, they understand that they are in jeopardy right now. And the third is, it's accepted as self-evident. Yeah, I've said it all the time that would come. It was my words. I said that. And it's clear that it will come. Everybody talks about it. Can you actually do anything today without mentioning AI? If you want to do anything in your field and thesis, and you don't mention AI, it's not good. What do you think will happen in 10 years? You don't have to mention AI anymore because everybody will know that there is AI involved. It's self-evident. It's clear. This is how fast we move. We forget very, very quickly about everything. So a little bit on exponential technologies. Please remember the Ds. There's 6 Ds involved. And the first D is, it's actually digital. If there's a technology that is not digital, it will very unlikely be exponential. Digital by itself is exponential. It's an exponent of something, of 2, mainly. If you use a quantum computer, it's actually a different base, but in general, it's a base of 2. 2 exponent 1, 2, 4, 8, 17, whatever. It goes exponentially up. With every number, you increase the exponent. So if it's not digital, it's probably not exponential. Second thing is, there's typically a disappointment phase. This is that ridiculous phase, right? There's a very good example. Did anybody ever heard of the Kodak example? What's the Kodak example? You know that Kodak example? The Kodak example is they were developing the digital camera. And they were the market leaders so they basically developed like this, linear. They sold more and more film, every year 3% more film or 5%, right? Very foreseeable. Market leader. And then at some point in time, an engineer came in and said, I have a cool idea. I have a digital camera. And then he says, then the management of Kodak said, so what does the digital camera look like? What does it do? And then the engineer said, well, it's about this big, weighs about 500 kilos, costs $200,000, and can do 10,000 pixels. And then the CEO said, ha ha ha, what the hell is that? Who needs this? We are talking 10 million pixels on our film, or 15 or 20. And the film costs $3. And it's that small. What happened the next year? So basically they said, this is the most ridiculous technology we've ever heard. The guys somehow managed to continue anyway. Next year he came back and said, well, my camera is now this size. And it only costs $10,000, and it can do 100,000 pixels now. Would you buy it now? No. Disappointing, right? Still too big, still too expensive, still not good enough. Actually, I don't have to continue that. You kind of know what happened. Kodak completely missed their own technology. They have the patent on the digital technology. And what happened when the third D comes, and the third D is here, it's called disruption. This is that disruption point. When this old disappointing technology gets from 1 year, exponential means 1 year you do 1 megapixel, next year you do 10 megapixels. Exponential growth, 1 0 added. Then you have a very quick time then till the technology is faster and better. What happened to the cost of digital cameras? Does anybody actually remember the time of analog cameras except for me? 36 pictures we could do max. Which means I would have done a picture a day here, just to be, maybe 2, just to be on the safe side, 1 with flash, 1 without, right? So see what, and I would have known about 3 days later on whether the film came out okay. Today, click, 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 and then, oh shit, you destroyed it. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't cost anything. So, disappointment and disruption. And what follows then is dematerialization. What is this? Everything gets smaller. So, pulling up my iPhone again. This is the cool iPhone XS. Right? So everybody says, oh, no. Bit boring. So XS, 2 cameras, 15 megapixel cameras. One in the front and 8 megapixel cameras. 3 cameras in there. Do you see the size of these cameras? They're probably that. Dematerialized. What comes with dematerialization? How much do they cost? I don't know, but not very much. Because otherwise they would not be in there. Probably €5, maybe 10 at the most. So everybody in this room can afford this camera, right? So what comes with dematerialization is something called demonetization. It doesn't cost anything anymore. And if it doesn't cost anything anymore, it's democratized. Everybody can afford it. That's why everybody in Africa has a camera, has a cell phone, a smartphone. They don't have a lot of money, but it doesn't cost a lot. And this is like the trait of an exponential technology. It will come with largely reduced availability, largely reduced power, dematerialized. It gets smaller and smaller. It gets more powerful and more powerful. And it is basically available for everyone at any time. So this goes, obviously, not only for cameras, but it goes for AI, sensors, robotics, synthetic biology, genetic engineering, and many other things. And I have some examples on that. I just had, maybe you cannot read it very well from you, but this is an old one. Old, it's very old, right? It's like 5 months old. I just happened to give a talk somewhere else, and I copied out what happened in 1 week in AI. And if you really follow that, and you see what happens right now in 1 week, you also see that our time is actually exponentially faster. This would have taken a lot longer before. I had a PhD student from 2011 to 2015, and he did a topic on segmentation, and it took him 3.5 years to do. And just out of fun, I put a master's student on the same topic using AI, and it took him 3 months to get the same thing done with faster and better results than this guy took 3.5 to 4 years in a PhD thesis. You also see how quickly technology develops and how easy it is to actually use. So the whole base of this is something we call Moore's Law. You heard that before, right? Very well known. Mr. Moore was the CEO and the founder of Intel. And if you look at what happened, this is that Moore's Law, that in 1958, he started with the ICs, with the integrated circuits, and it was 2 transistors. And in 2017, we're now at 21 billion transistors and 110 teraflops of calculation speed. This is an increase, and not counting this one, this only goes to the 7 billion, so it's actually times 3 again to that. So it's a 300 billion-fold improvement of price performance in 40 years. And if you plot that, it's exponential. Because, doubling something every 18 months or 24 months is exponential. So this is Mr. Moore. That's the original Moore's Law. And if you plot that on a time scale, then you see this is actually the time that Moore's Law started, transistors. and integrated circuits. So if you go back, though, on this exponential scale and you use vacuum tubes, relays, and mechanical calculators, you'll see it still follows this exponential path. So now we are in 2016. We are at this NVIDIA, this 21 billion transistor integrated circuit. So do we all believe it goes on like this? There's only a yes or a no. So what do you say? How many are for yes? How many are for no? And the rest is undecided again? We need to work on you guys who are undecided. You're lazy. So it may not continue at integrated circuits because integrated circuits have actually reached the physical dimension where you cannot get much smaller anymore. But now we have quantum computers. And if you look at quantum computers, we're right now talking about a 72-qubit computer from Google. It's not working yet, I have to say. But quantum computing has already shown supremacy over other computing technologies. Means you can do things with a quantum computer that you could not do with a normal computer. And if that 72-qubit really would work, then that would replace thousands and thousands of existing computers. Now, in which phase of the Ds are we with quantum computing? It's actually pretty disappointing, I believe. We have these numbers, but nobody... Do you know of an application that works with it? Have you ever seen a quantum computer? They're about filling this room, and millions of dollars. They're big, unreliable, unpredictable. But do we believe they will get smaller, cheaper? So we'll probably get at some point in time out of this. I don't think we'll ever see it, or at least maybe not in my lifetime, we will not see a quantum computer in an iPhone or an iPhone-like device, because that's actually stupid. Because you would use a quantum computer for calculations that are kind of like also unpredictable, because it's a statistic event. So for things like this, you probably are okay with the integrated circuits at the moment. Just make them a little smaller, a little more powerful. Okay, so data, exponential. From, I don't know, when was Earth created? I think I have to sit somebody else here. Maybe you have to sit over here so I pick on you. So, when was Earth created? How many? Okay, whatever. Does anybody have a different opinion? If you're a Christian, you think it's about 6,000 BC, because that's when God just made it, right? And if you're, I don't know what Muslims think of, I don't know what Hindus think of, it doesn't really matter. Regardless how old the Earth is, from the time it was actually created till 2005, we created 130 exabytes of data. 1 exabyte is 18 zeros. I did not know that beforehand either. I did not know what an exabyte was. I never heard that one actually before. Anybody have an idea what happened since 2005? Well, you can already imagine, right? For the first 14 billion years, it took us 130 exabytes. And since 2005 to 2018-19, we have actually 30-folded that number. 300-folded, 30-folded, 300-folded. 300-folded. And why is that? Because we don't only have the data growth. This one here on the data, it's also pretty interesting because a commercial airliner creates 1 terabyte of data per day. And it takes now, for 5 billion gigabytes, it takes only 2 minutes to generate on this Earth. What are we going to do with all this data? Well, part of it is also these sensors. 30 sensors in this cell phone. So we have 50 people, 30 iPhones or Androids. They have just as many, if not more. So we have 1,500 sensors sitting in this room here. What are these sensors doing? Producing data, transmitting data. Nobody knows what happens with this data. Is this data valuable? Probably. Possibly. Now, if everybody of us would wear an iWatch, which measures your heart, your ECG all the time, would that be helpful for your health, possibly, in the future? I think we would agree on that one. So sensors will play a big role. And there is a huge growth in sensors. Cost per computing performance, so it's just the inverse, is gone dramatically down. Storage costs gone dramatically down. I remember the first time I had this, I said it before, this USB stick, I think probably like 15 years ago. So I had this USB stick with 16 megabytes on it. And it cost, I think, $50. And I was like, wow, that's cool. 16 megabytes on this one. Today, a 16 gigabyte costs $3. So I have increased the performance by a factor of 1,000. I have decreased the cost by a factor of 20 or 30. So I've actually increased the price performance by a factor of 30,000 in just about 10 or 15 years. Happens everywhere. Indian call, that's why I like this so much. None of you spends any money on calls anymore. But 10 years ago, when you would have studied in India, you would have called your mama maybe once a week or once a month because it was too expensive. Now you can chat every day. I'm not sure that that's good, by the way. I think you should not talk to your mother every day. I think you should talk to her max once a month. That's also good. Or once a week, because otherwise you never lets go. Calculation, network. So all the data that we have needs connection, network time, right? 3G. I remember the first time I had 3G. I was the happiest man in the world, right? Before that, I had this Edge, 9,600 or maybe 56,000 bit per second. And even the shitty websites at the time took a long time to build up with that. Then we had 3G, and I was like, "Bah, they're so fast." Now, if you don't have at least LTE in Europe, you're just pissed because it's too slow. And now, LTE is actually too slow. We need to go with something called 5G. And 5G will be introduced, at least in parts in Europe and US next year. I don't know, India. But we will start having some 5G networks coming up. So speed is not the issue anymore, right? I believe at least. Energy. Do you know where Germany is with relation to the sun? It's on the northern hemisphere, and it's in the northern part of the northern hemisphere, which is not an ideal country for sun. And in our country, which is far away from the sun, we have actually created a day, in one day, in April 2017, already 85% of all the energy with renewable energies, and it will continue. So a country like India, which has plenty of sun, should benefit dramatic from that. No more energy needs. Now we know all, I mean, that's normally what comes. Yes, energy has a problem because we can't store it. I'm sure that we figure that one out too. So energy cost has gone down dramatically too. So solar panels don't cost anything anymore. Trucks. So last time that I pick on you. So you're a mother now, and you have a son like Daniel. Well, actually, you can say it for me. So I'm the father. Daniel said. Danny comes to me and says he wants to become a truck driver. And I said, Daniel, not a good idea, because there's already self-driving trucks around. I'm not sure that's a very, very interesting career, because I don't believe that in the next 5 or 6 or 10 years there will be any more truck drivers. Maybe there's still some truck drivers, but they do something else. Maybe they do computing while they do programming, I don't know, and while they supervise and they're there to unload. But in general, you don't need it anymore. We already have in Germany a certain part of the highway where they use it as a test for self-driving trucks. There's always somebody sitting in there, but he's basically reading a book. I told you about who was here with the taxi. This was the CMS, the CES is called, Computer Electronics a show in Las Vegas. Showed the first ones of these self-flying helicopters. Now, the FAA, the Federal Aviation Association, doesn't let them fly by themselves yet, but I believe in 5 or 10 years that will be the case. There will be no more pilots. We have a lot of trains in Germany without a driver. What do you need a driver for on a train? I mean, if somebody hops in front of your train, even the driver cannot stop it. So, and he has sensors around it, that's about as good as you can get. So, does it make sense to become a pilot these days, a commercial one, or a truck driver, or a train driver? I don't think so. This is another one, transportation, electric planes, hyperloops. This is cool. So they're building one right now in the US, a hyperloop system. So it's basically, whoever has been in a hospital, they have these air systems where they actually send diagnosis or probes or something around. This is just a little bigger. And you have seen this in movies too before. Now, this is an interesting one because the FAA estimates, the Federal Aviation Association, that's the US Air Association, that is a very conservative gang. This is not a future-oriented one. This is fact-based. They just say, oh shit, these stupid drones are coming, now we have to deal with them. And they believe that by 2021, which is very far away from now, right? Years and years. It's only 2 years away. They say 1.6 million drones will be flying in the US alone for transport purposes. You see what happens in this world? So I thought, there's a picture missing here. It's unfortunate. There was a picture of SpaceX. Because SpaceX, no, it was not SpaceX, it was the organization of Richard Branson. They just flew into space about 3 months ago, and now they have over 700 people who signed up already, and they will start commercial space travel in 2021 as well. So, if I really would ask you to go back 5 or 10 years to your own thinking process and think what you have now that was not there 5 or 10 years ago, you would be really surprised to see that you have completely forgotten about that. Or the other way around, I ask a different question. If I put you 5 years back now, and you know what happened, would you have believed it? And most of you would actually, when they really think about it, say, probably not. Because we are just the linear thinkers. We don't think that way. So the question is, when you go into this exponential, why? I have shown you examples of data, sensors, transportation, electricity. Why should that not affect healthcare? Can anybody tell me a reason why not? I honestly don't know one. So that's why I assume it will come. And it will come probably very traumatic. So I showed you this one before, so that's why we don't have to go through this anymore. And one of the reasons is also, I've mentioned it several times, but now I'll go again here. This is the cost of healthcare, and this is the life expectancy. So in every country in the world, life expectancy goes up with money spent, which is actually good. You know, spending less money and becoming older would challenge the question why you should spend money on healthcare. The US spends money and actually now dropped life expectancy. There is too much bureaucracy, too much time wasted, and too many things done in the US system. Again, I don't know about the Indian one, which makes this healthcare system completely out of control. Do you know why there are so many MRIs in the US? Because we need them. There's a lot, I think there was an estimate that half of the MRI scans in the US are done because there's legal problems. If they don't do an MRI, then the doctor's afraid that he gets sued by a lawyer for negligence. So they actually increase the healthcare costs dramatically because of the lawyers that sue everybody who's not doing these things. I hope it will never happen in your country that is the case. But this is a very threatening moment. I told you this one before, another exponential topic, gene. So this is the cost for the whole genome. So the entire genome of your body. And it obviously cost $100 million initially because it took a long time before they came up with the technology. And this is also an exponential curve. It's an exponential decay in cost. And interesting enough, there is even a more than exponential curve, a double or triple exponential curve, because here is when CRISPR, this is the technology, and a company called Illumina, which developed this technology, came out with a much easier, much cheaper way of analyzing the genes. And then it dropped the cost even further. And now we are, I think I have a shown here. This is my order. See, thank you, Michael. 2 orders. This is 2 for 338 euros. 1 for 169 euros. For the whole genome, which costs thousands, tens of thousands. There's no more reason why you shouldn't do that, because I think there's extremely valuable information in this type of gene. Because if you look at that, look at this one here. 32,000 out of 50,000 known diseases are caused by single point mutations. So if you identify that mutation, it does not necessarily mean that you get the disease, but you have a higher chance of getting the disease, or bigger chance. Should it also be possible to be able to repair it if you have that? If they identify that you have this gene mutation that could cause to prostate cancer or to whatever, to Alzheimer or some other things, would you not believe you'd be able to fix it? So that's why I believe in 50 or 100 years from now, we probably don't need this advanced technology anymore, because we have a lot of things done liquid. We do a gene analysis, and then we do some form of fixation, and then done it is. Now, we won't even be, people always say, well, but we still need to have emergency because people get run over by a car. Are we really getting run over by a car if we have self-driving cars with all the kind of sensors built in? We may not even get run over by a car anymore. Sad to hear. No more accidents. Okay, I'll go to this one. So, this is another thing that I mentioned already and that I believe that we should work on, is getting to healthy aging. So what typically happens is, let me just, I'll go back. What typically happens is with age, you lose actually capability. And the quality of life goes down like this. So it's not like this. But what we should try to do is actually push our life forward so we live longer, and mainly keep our quality of life up to the last end. And also our disease incidence, keep that up to the last minute. So how can we do this? By analyzing the genes, analyzing your body composition, doing all kinds of things. And that's what you guys should work on, so that we have a good life and maybe a longer life. There's one example. This is called senescent cells. So senescent cells, again, I'm looking, the doctor is hopefully not shaking their head when I say something really weird. But there is cell recycling going on in your body. And at some point in time, the cells don't recycle anymore. And then they're senescent. They're basically not getting new anymore. That's why your skin gets, at some point in time, gets wrinkled. So this is some age disease. What they have done in the US, they have actually replaced the blood of an old mouse with the blood of a new mouse, of a young mouse. And what they have found out is that there was a huge decrease in age-related diseases in this old mouse, and there was an average of 30% longer life this mouse had. The old mouse with the new blood. Now, this is still far away. It's 35% actually, it says here. This is still far away, but don't you believe that could also happen to humans? That we actually probably cover that issue with these senescent cells that address a lot of these issues here, and that we can fix a lot of these age-related diseases and also these non-communicable diseases by just making sure that our cells continuously replenish rather than not reproducing anymore at some point in time. Of course, that could happen. That I may actually ask you later on for, instead of giving me some money, give me some of your blood so I can actually make myself a little younger again. And if you put this all together, so if you plug all these things together, this genetic information, this health data you gather, the MRIs you have, everything you have in your history, don't you believe that doing all this will actually create more information about what could happen to you, when that could happen, and how you could prevent it? Do you believe that? So if you believe that, we need to work on this. This is prevention. Okay, so there will be a huge paradigm shift, I believe, in healthcare. The paradigm shift will be, and as mentioned many times before, that we will take care more of the prevention rather than of treating the sick people. and that we have a value base. So don't do anything that doesn't help you, and don't pay for anything that doesn't help you. Patient-centric. Right now, what happens to you as a patient? You have to go to institutions. You have to go to that doctor sends you somewhere else, that sends you to a hospital, you to a laboratory. It's not patient-centric, it's institution-centric. And we probably will get to a point very soon where we'll have a patient-centric healthcare system. At least I hope that will be the case. AI, machine learning. Will that be very important? Absolutely, it will be incredibly important. I'll show you also some examples on this one. So Bertrand Lamesca, who I can highly recommend. Anybody heard of him before? If not, he calls himself a medical futurist, and he is the guy who he comes up with a weekly newsletter called the Medical Futurist, TMF. And you can sign up to him, it doesn't cost anything. It's quite interesting. He always shows what happens in the world of medicine. He's a medical doctor himself, and he's obviously very much involved in AI topics these days. And his saying was, I like this a lot, that AI is probably the stethoscope of the 21st century. The stethoscope was the first device which allowed doctors to actually listen to the body and look or hear into the body without opening the body. That was an incredible revolution at the time when that came out. And so he believes that that is the same thing that with what AI is doing to medicine. It will completely throw medicine around and change a lot of things as they have been done at the moment. Okay, so there's also people, let me just go, I'm really sorry that this is not here. Let's just go to the next one. So what you have to understand, and that's actually something which I think is important for looking at when AI is a danger or not, is to understand what's inside this black box. If you understand that it's a program box and you understand what's inside, then it's not AI anymore, then it's just a program. And we need to have people who really understand what's inside, because otherwise I get a little worried that we get all kinds of weird results, and we believe these results, and these results are based on facts that may not be true or may not be realistic. Now look at what Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and Stephen Hawking have said. Now Stephen Hawking is already dead, unfortunately. He was a great guy, but he got more and more negative the older he got, more towards the end of his life. He basically, I don't think it says in here, but he basically doesn't believe that we will be around for more than 100 years and then we will have killed ourselves, or AI will have killed ourselves, or the robots will kill ourselves. So he was very negative on this one. Elon Musk, very interesting. He is actually, you've heard about his ambitions to go to space. He wants to go to space because he thinks the humans will kill themselves sooner or later. So this is his main motivation. And Bill Gates is a little bit more careful. He says, well, I don't think there's a need to panic, but let's not worry. I don't agree with either. I'm worried too, and I think we should make everybody aware that AI could be a problem, and AI could be something that we may be getting too dependent on, and that we may believe too much in, and that we should worry about it. But we can't stop it anymore anyway. We have to just make sure that it's controlled. Who watches James Bond's movies? Nobody? Nobody watches James Bond movies? You're kidding, right? This is India. Yeah? Long back. Nothing has changed, I tell you that, in James Bond. You? So what is the typical story of a James Bond? There's always a bad one, right? Dr. No or whatever. There's always a bad one. And what does this bad one wants to do? He wants to take over the world, right? He wants to govern the world. And what does he very often do? Here's some evil technology or some nuclear bombs or whatever, and he threatens the world. And then James Bond comes and solves the problem, right? But this is the story. You know, if you think about it, this could be the story of the world. Because AI could be used as a weapon And there could be somebody who says, I don't really care about what you guys want and or whether you guys want to live nicely together and whether you guys want to have a nice life. I want to conquer the world. I want to be the boss here. So we need to make sure that we have some form of control and governance on this one. Is ethics objective? No, it's not. Ethics is completely subjective. You think differently about what is ethically okay than I do. Because I come from a Western society, you come from an Indian society. Ethics is very much based on ethnical roots, where you come, how you were brought up to. Your parents told you this is not good. My parents may have said it's okay if you do that. I have a different understanding about what's right or wrong. And that's why we need to actually get, probably on an ethics point, we need to get to a more generalized understanding. Otherwise, we'll have problems too. So that goes the same direction to that one here. Okay. Now we go into a little more into details. Radiologists, we talked about them already. They will probably, and I have to say that Bertolt Mesco is a radiologist, so he's a little bit more careful in the whole thing. I'm going every year to a radiology show in the US, the largest radiological show in the United States. And 5 years ago, they said, AI may come. 3 years ago, they said, AI is around the corner. And this year, they said, AI is here. So they understand slowly, it's not that slow, it goes very quick, that things change incredibly fast. And I would agree with that for the next 15 years maybe less, that radiologists who say, I don't really care about AI, they will disappear. Because somebody else will use AI in combination with his own knowledge, be very empathetic with the patient, and will win. They will not go to the other radiologist anymore. So this is based on Bertolt Mesco, the medical futurist is what will disappear, or that will stay, so you have a somewhat safe life, according to him at least. And what will disappear is radiology, dermatology. Why dermatology? It's all imaging based too. You look at growth. It's not all dermatology, by the way. It's maybe looking at white or black skin cancer. But there's a lot of other skin diseases where you still need to have a doctor. This is more related to the diagnostic part rather than to the therapeutic part. Pathology, primary care, we talked about this, having these sensors around you, then you don't need to go to primary care anymore. What will probably stay are these ones for the time being at least. Now, this is something that I believe will happen, so I did not copy that necessarily. I don't necessarily believe that AI will get rid of everything, but I will rather believe that the way that we are able to use drugs in the future will actually make sure that we will not need the doctors anymore, not as many anymore. And also the mere fact that we are actually using these kind of preventive measures will make sure that we will have less doctors around. So it's not AI only, there's a lot of things that will add up to a complete shift. So there's AI health optimized biomarkers. So if you have a biomarker that tells you what will happen with you, you can do something already about it. In combination with lifestyle guidance apps, I think there were some on your list over there. How to eat well, how to move well, how to actually monitor your body well. That will be at least a starting point to these chronic diseases. There's also the opinion, I thought that was very nice to listen to that, suggests that only through machines will we be able to understand what it is to be human. So the doctor will probably have a chance to become more human again and take care of you as a patient rather than you talking to a machine. I think the combination is actually what will do it. IBM Watson, heard of that? IBM Watson. It's a big program. It's, in the meantime, able to diagnose cancer significantly better. So there's a couple of examples I have. Melanoma, the algorithm is at 95% accuracy, the human at 75%. Pathology, 81, 73. Mammographic scanning, 87 with this 81. Those are actually older numbers. They probably have gotten better. How does a radiologist learn? How does he learn? He looks at images, right? So he does 1,000 scans this year, he does 1,000 scans next year, and every time there's something happening, you learn something. That's a linear learning process. How does a computer learn or AI learn? They're all connected. 1,000 scans here, there, they're all at the same, millions of scans. Has a much better way of learning, a much faster learning rate. That's why I believe that this rate is actually has gone up in the meantime and will go up even further. And probably even, I said that before, when I said that we actually compared to humans, may even go over 100%, which is theoretically not possible. But if you look at this, what we call artificial narrow intelligence, it's only a narrow field. It's not a general purpose. So I cannot say, what is your health? I can only say, you don't have any breast tumor. Narrow. Then they're already significantly better. Then you need to ask, what does this lead to? What kind of changes that causes in healthcare delivery? Who's paying for it? So let's use our medical professional here. So you employ artificial intelligence. Can you charge the health insurance more money because you use artificial intelligence? No. Why would you do it then? Because it costs you money, right? So it takes money away from your fee. And we need to solve this problem, because otherwise what sense does it make that we develop an artificial program if nobody ever pays for it? I believe very soon we will get to a point where instead of getting a drug prescription, you will get a prescription for a program. And why not? If it does a better job. Chest CT images, maybe something interesting for you. So significantly more accurate. There's all kinds of companies you can find this already. This is only the startup companies in the US that deal with AI, and they're all narrow intelligence. So that's also important for him again, MRI brain interpretation, or very dedicated programs. How, as a doctor, would you use this? If you have to deal with do you have to buy all these programs? We need to find a way to integrate them maybe into a general practice. It's not done yet. There's a lot of things that are still open. So a little case in between, that's a case out of my own technology that you may be interested to. So what we have done here, and I always put in this value proposition canvas. It should come here in a sec. No, it didn't come, sorry. I think the transmission has not worked very well. But what should have come up here is the value proposition canvas. Because I wanted to tell you why we do this. Because you have to ask again for the reason, for the problem that we solve. So this one is a thyroid. And it's an ultrasound scan of a thyroid. So this is the thyroid, and if you have thyroid disease, you have nodules in there. This is here. And you have growing thyroid volume. Do you know how you do it right now? You actually scan it, and then you kind of like manually look for the largest slice and say, stop, and then you measure by hand. This is not very accurate. There's about a 30% variance in there. So the people that we discussed this with said, we need to have the ability to do a 3D volume segmentation of the thyroid, because only that allows us to compare the volume from last year to the volume of this year. It only allows us to compare the size of the nodule from last year to the nodule of this year. And only then we can actually determine, is it a cancerous growth, is it a benign growth, what do we have to do? So there's a clear need on that. And it's really done very simple these days and very inaccurate. So we have actually come up with a new way of segmenting it. So that would be interesting to you. We don't segment based on images. We segment on signals. Where's Abhishek? Abhishek, we segment on signals. So please listen to this. What we do here is we use an image and we actually create out of the image a signal. So we use these 20 by 20 blocks that you see here. I think you see it also in the next one. We use these little blocks and create a zigzag line in these 20 by 20 and make a signal out of it. And then we analyze the signal, wavelet transform, Fourier transform, we do autoregressive modeling, phase coupling, etc., and try to create features. And these features are then used to segment. So it's something you don't see. Something you can analyze, but you don't see. If you really would look at the image, and this here is the radiologist or the ENT guy who says this is the thyroid. But is it really the thyroid? It's just the doctor's opinion that this is the thyroid. Our program actually analyzes things that you don't even see because there's only 256 grayscales. If you cannot see anymore, then that's what it is. But treating it as a signal, the image, gives completely new information. We have actually applied this now to CT and MRI imaging. It works excellently, and we get much higher accuracy rates than with normal segmentation, and you can plug it into an AI program. No. First of all, you have a 2D slice here, so you do it the opposite way. You actually use a 2D slice, you segment, and then you create a 3D volume out of it. A 3D volume in general to acquire is of much lower resolution and accuracy. So I would always advise, if you want to have a high resolution scan, you always go for 2D, not for 3D. But you need to have a 3D volume later on. Does it answer the question, or was it? Right. That's right. So these are like cool new things that come up, and at the end of the day, do you really need the image? No, you only need to have a number. The number says 75 is the volume of the thyroid, and last year was 70. Big draw. You don't need to have the image. The image is for somebody who likes to look at images, but the relevance is in the data. So I believe that we don't need MRI images in the future. We need just the outcome, the result of an MRI image. What does it tell me? It tells me there's nothing wrong. Good. Go on. Next. So this is what we do in our chair, and I thought it was kind of cool to present you. So that's what I do. I present you every once in a while some technologies and give you some reasons why we do that. Because I really tell every one of my students that we don't do things without reason. Just for the heck of it, we don't do it. I want you guys to think about why you're doing it. If you cannot give me a good reason why this has a benefit in the future, we're not doing it. Now, this is maybe not the complete good research, but we come up with more results based on this thinking process. Okay, there's more and more coming up. There's also interesting to see what AI will do to the workforce. I particularly like, so the truck driver, we talked already, right? You don't want to become a truck driver anymore because the average expectancy is that there will be no more truck drivers in 10 years. I like the one here where it says AI researcher. So in 75 years, people believe that we don't even need AI researchers anymore. Of course not, because AI can create new AI theoretically, right? So what is the most stable one is the one where you work with your hands, in all honesty. Putting the roof tiles on a roof is difficult to do also in the future with a robot. There will be robots eventually for that. But for the time being, I think that's a fairly good job. If you go for job security, don't go for a big company, go for a labor job. Badly paying, but at least it's somewhat safe. Okay? So, I show you a couple of pictures here, a couple of nice ones here. And then I ask you, what is wrong? I think I mentioned it many times already. So what's wrong with these pictures? You're an AI researcher, and you're creating a new app, AI-based app. What don't you like on this one here? No charge. Why would you invest a year of your time or more if there's no charge, there's no revenue? Which means you don't make anything. Why would you do that? I think it will be solved soon, but for the time being, there's no money in the AI. Now, do you believe venture capitalists are smart people? People invest in your company. What are they good at normally? Now, what's their business model? Why do they give you money? Why do I give you money for your company, your new start company? I give you $1 million. I want to get at least 10 million back. Probably more. That's the reason why I give you money. So, I have met a lot of venture capitalists in my life, believe me, and I have actually found out that they're not incredibly smart. No, I'm saying something. No, they're not incredibly intelligent, but they're incredibly smart. And there's a huge difference between that. Intelligence means you are the deep AI researcher, and you know a lot. Being smart means of how to actually get information to get the best decision made for you. And they're smart with respect to investing money. Very good. So, interesting enough, and that's why I've showed that, this is the amount of money that has been invested in AI. Just in the US alone, 2010, do you see something? What is this curve? What do you think happened 2015? Wham! What do you think happened 2016? Wham! So what I'm saying, that's why I said this, there is no money in AI yet, but I can guarantee you that venture capitalists would not pour that much money into this business if they would not believe there would be something coming back. So there will be something happening. I'm 100% sure, and I'm also sure they will find a really good business model in that one. If you look at the number of patents, it's also an exponential curve. This is the number of patents on AI-related subjects. So there is a lot of things happening. And did anybody ever hear of the Gartner hype cycle? I don't think I have that here. The Gartner hype cycle is kind of something like that. It goes up exponentially, and then, oh, not so good after all. It goes back down, and then eventually it picks back up again. So it's this hype, this initial hype. We are not so sure in AI and other technologies on whether we are on this initial hype curve or on the second line of the hype curve. Everybody talks about AI, but we're not so really sure what we can really do with it and whether we can really use money with it. But it will come, for sure. But again, we're not so sure on which part of the curve we're on. Okay. I don't think I have to continue talking about this because you can also check this website out, Human Longevity. I've visited their site in San Diego. It's a company. And what they do is they actually charge you $10,000. You go there and you get a full body MRI done. They do all this stuff here with you and they basically analyze you from top to toe. And if you have money, I would do it. It will get cheaper anyway. So maybe you wait another 10 years. You're all young, you can do that. We'll all wait 10 years and do it then. But that will certainly lead to completely new business models. Another one of my own ideas. Does anybody know what this is? What's this? It's blood vessels? Where? Come on, the doctor has to know that. Come on. Where is it? What? No. No. Larynx. In here. And the blood vessels, the amount of disorder in a blood vessel. So typically these blood vessels go like this. They go down. If you have like curly ones coming up, disordered vessels, it's an indication of a tumor. Now, it's an image-based approach. You should be able to find it and do it. So what we have done now is actually we have used what we call a contact endoscopy device, which we stick into your larynx. We take the pictures and make an automatic analysis segmentation of. We make a segmentation of the images we find the vessels. We make a binary image, vessel, no vessel, and then we try to see whether they are disordered. And we do this very quick with an AI program to create a screening tool on whether you have a cancerous tissue or not. Now, not everybody has to do this, but people who have family history, smoke, drink, that's a good thing to do. It goes really, really quickly. So the purpose of this was to create a preventive tool, a relatively inexpensive tool for an ENT therapist so he can quickly say cancer, no cancer. It's almost like a pathological device. It actually works. We have actually published a paper on that one as well. It will be presented at the EMBC in Berlin in July. And the doctors are extremely happy with it. On whether we make a product out of it, not sure yet. But again, I have asked first, what is the problem? How can I solve the problem? And then try to find a technology to solve this. I think I have another example. No. This one I just wanted to give you because I am not a fan of that. Maybe an older person. I believe that this has huge ethical impact. So please look at, and moral is another thing. Moral is a subjective, not an objective measure. Is that something that we really want to happen? I don't think so. I don't want that because we will all look the same. Everybody will be the son or the daughter of George Clooney and whoever is a good female counterpart because we like the looks of them, and maybe we mix a little bit Einstein in there. So it's I don't know. I think that's really sad when we get to this point. But I'm not sure that we can stop that either. Okay, I've said that already. Another example, cheap endoscope. You know what we've really tried, and it was very funny. It was my chair manager who came up with that. He just said, it's a Sony, it's not an Apple. I'm really sad to say that. But apparently this Sony system has the best camera. Let's believe them, okay? So best camera. So what we said is, why don't we just compare? We used a normal endoscope, and we printed a 3D adapter to the iPhone. Sorry, Sony, to the phone, and then attached that and used a little light to illuminate that. And really, honestly, we made a comparison with a 4K system from Olympus for $80,000, and the results were the same. The image quality was the same. The adapter cost €5. This is endoscope, used maybe 50. This is a flashlight. And you can use this anywhere now. This is what I said when I said we should do cheap, inexpensive, portable, robust, systems. You have a digital image right away. You can send it somewhere. You can make a movie out of it. These are the things you have to think of on whether it's really necessary to continue with an €80,000 endoscopy tower. Maybe there's some cheaper ways to do it. Maybe there's ways to actually put these devices into the hands of doctors in rural India. Is there a break? Okay, let me just see. I think I may be almost done. Maybe I do this one. Just do this one quick. Another one, thyroid imaging. So what did we do? Is we created a neck brace. And in this neck brace, you can actually guide your ultrasound now, up and down, left and right. And the brace actually has a resistance belt. You know exactly where the ultrasound probe was, which means you can later on reconstruct a 3D image. And that is used to actually monitor all kinds of disease. Everybody can do it now. Ultrasound has a problem that you will do a different ultrasound than you, because you all push differently, hold it from a different angle. So this is a device which makes the whole thing easier. Does not cost very much either. It's also 3D printed, maybe $20. And you can carry it around. Okay, any new ideas? Write them down. Note them. What have you learned? Maybe you have some new ideas. And with that, I let you go into the coffee break. Quick one. Still coffee drinking? Come on, guys, it's the last. It's only a little bit more. Are there still people outside? Okay. Okay, so they will probably come up. So I'm sure we will be finished on time today. Actually, look what's left. So I will show you a couple more examples, and I hope, let me just check on whether that's really true or not. We should play another game and then go home. Well, we'll see. No, we may not play this game because we keep it for tomorrow, for Monday. So what I will ask you to do is, if you come back on Monday, please have in your mind a couple of technologies. I'm giving you this homework. It's an additional homework. Think about technologies in the healthcare imaging, image-guided domain area that you will be sure will be around in 10 years or 15 years and that are maybe not around right now. Because we will play a game based on what will happen with everything else when these technologies are really there. So one more time, technologies or services or things that you just see coming up that will definitely be there in 10 years or 15 years. You're sure. And these ones we will analyze. It's a game that's called Future Wheels. So we'll actually play future aspects of what will happen when these technologies are actually there. Now, use them in the healthcare perspective. I think if you stay in the imaging or image-guided therapy, you will be too narrow. So just stay in the healthcare, but be as specific as possible. Just say we will definitely have advanced pathological imaging using AI programs, and they will provide 100% results. That would be a really cool definition, and that we can use and play some consequences out of this. Okay? So this is your additional homework. Think about everybody about one technology. I will actually then let you discuss these technologies, and then you pick one that you will further elaborate on. Okay, just a couple more examples. Star Trek, tricorder, we're talking about it already this morning. So, Dr. McCoy, tricorder, you can actually buy for $649. Can do all kinds of things, ECG, pulse oximetry, sleep monitoring, remote monitoring, thermometer, pedometer, BIS tracker, da-da-da-da. $649. You can actually measure heart arrhythmias with a little sensor. It's not so much of detecting them initially, it's monitoring which is important, because you don't have to go to the doctor anymore all the time. You actually monitor it at home. And when something happens, there can be automatically a response generated by calling an appropriate doctor. This is cool because it comes from our department. And what we did here is, I'm not sure if we presented this here in India, but what we believe is that if you measure we're not measuring the pulse, but if you measure the flow is also a very valuable information. You measure the flow of your carotids. That everyone in this room has an individual carotid profile. It's almost like a biometric print. And the biometric print, because your diameter is different, your flow speed is different, your distance to the heart is different, maybe your distance to the brain is different, maybe you have a stenosis somewhere. And if you measure the flow profile and you analyze this very carefully with signal processing, you can actually find features in your flow profile. High intensity, frequency, you go for power spectral densities and just say how many watts are at certain frequencies. So you can have features. We don't exactly know what these features all mean, but you can clearly state that this profile with these features comes from you. And if I know that, I can use it for monitoring purposes. I can see, well, I also know you have a stenosis. What happens to that stenosis? How is the flow profile changing? We believe it's not changing with activity, so we have actually tried this out already with physical activity. It's not changing. And now I'm going back to the old question, what do you need this for? You need this for monitoring at home. You need this for basically having additional data points about your health status, about your status of your arteries, about the flexibility. We believe you can maybe listen to some elasticity issues of the vessels. And using that and creating a lot of data points, we believe at some point in time you can say when somebody has this kind of features and this kind of profile, you have a much higher likelihood of having a stenosis in your brain. Or maybe you have heart valve problems. Some of the things you can already hear is called auscultation. But we do a little bit differently with auscultation because we are covering a completely different frequency band, and we're having advanced sensors. So we actually build a little device. So we have a double stereo sensor, MEMS sensors, and these MEMS sensors then record a profile which we analyze, local AI program, and have this little device and hope that we can do this fairly cheap for maybe like 20, 30 euros at the most, and or have an attachment onto an iPhone. So the purpose of that is trying to going for the burning problem. We want to create something which allows you to monitor your personal vascular status at home, and maybe use these data points to find out later on whether you have some disease or not. There is also things you can do with refractive heart monitoring. It's already available, also on an iPhone. You can buy that. So you would actually replace ultrasound. Thank you very much. You would actually replace ultrasound and X-ray. Another thing that we said before, try to actually look at areas where you can replace existing technologies, expensive technologies, complicated technologies, or even dangerous technologies. X-rays is not that healthy. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease can be measured with cell phones. You can actually analyze the coughing, and you can analyze the sound, and you can get indications about this chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. You can even find ways to look at pancreatic cancer. Because pancreatic cancer, I'm not a total expert on this one, but it has certain effects on the color of your eye. But you cannot really see that. But the AI and the camera on this device can actually analyze the vessels and the color of the eye white, and can see on whether that could be a cause caused by a pancreatic deficiency. Now, there is no other real means to checking pancreatic cancer or pancreatic diseases. Typically, when you have pancreatic problems, pancreatic disease, cancer, you find it out and it's already way too late. Basically, you're almost dead. This is not from me. I still like it though, because I talked at over lunch a little bit on this one. This is a $2,000 ultrasound scanner on it's called Butterfly Ventures. And let's go back, sorry. Hopefully nobody sees this. Yeah. So at least we know it's coming up, right? So this time I want to see you jump up, okay? Okay, it's a $2,000 ultrasound device, and it's based on a mobile phone. You can buy this already. It's $1,990. I tried to buy it, but they didn't sell it to me because I was in Europe, and in Europe they don't have CE certification yet. I can only buy it in the US. And so I was trying to buy it in the US through some dark channels, right? But I've not gotten it yet. But it allows you to do, first of all, it has really good image quality. So this is the carotids again, probably up here, and color flow. So you can see the direction of the blood flow. You can also see the flow information. This is the heart valve. I think this is a heart valve. I'm not entirely sure. Okay, but it has different probes, and it basically fits into a pocket. Value proposition cameras again. Who is it for? General practitioners, emergency doctors, all kinds. They have it with them. You know, you remember this old doctor's kit? Stethoscope and maybe a hammer or something. You have different, the doctor's bag of 2019 or 2025 will look completely different. There will be a set of sensors and some electronic component and maybe some computer system which analyzes you very quickly. Completely different set. Maybe an electric stethoscope, not a normal one anymore. And you will combine all these things. And this is, I believe this is part of a normal, of a future doctor's bag. Everybody should have this little ultrasound with them as a doctor. And I think for $2,000, it is affordable. Okay, I have actually made this at one point in time. I gave you the publication, so did you give them the link? Yes. So this is part of a publication, a paper I wrote one time before. It's actually 2 years ago already. No, 1 year ago. And I want to just see what kind of exponential technologies will be around in the healthcare field and what do we need to work on. And a couple of the ones we have talked about today, we have not talked so much about data mining, big data, even though we have indicated all the data points that we gather need to be analyzed. And we have a little team doing something, but I also sometimes question how big data has to be. If I look at my ultrasound scans, we have actually used a reference space of, I think, 50 images, and it worked really well. It's not big data. This is pretty small data. I'm not sure that big data helps always, but for certain things it will help, particularly when you cross-correlate data with amnesia, with past history. So when you do a very complicated, then big data will certainly help. But for certain imaging, I'm not entirely sure how big data really has to be. 3D printing, what we do with the Australians, for example, is that we print scaffolds. So for breast implants, for example, so instead of having a female breast implant out of plastic, we use actually a biodegradable scaffold structure, and we plant cells on it, muscle or fat cells, and that basically will disappear at some point in time. And that one can already be done. The same thing goes for like bone implants, augmented and virtual reality for surgical guidance. So you have some glasses on or some projections where the MRI image is projected directly onto the patient, or where the image, the path to the organ will actually be shown to you in some glasses or some other means. That will certainly come. Robotics, I think there's no question. Everybody of you used a robot here somewhere on your plans. I also believe that something like blockchains will come. Everybody knows blockchains? Blockchains is basically a distributed, a means of ensuring that safe data is being transmitted or stored using distributed networks rather than point-to-point networks. So everybody knows bitcoins. Bitcoins are based on blockchain technology. So it's not one person that verifies, it's a multitude of people verifying. You cannot change the history. So the history is always present, which now sounds a little complicated for healthcare, but if you use this type of application and attach it to a health record, that'd be very valuable. You attach it to the history of a pharmaceutical. Testing done, what were the side effects, all the other, that would be extremely valuable. So I believe that these type of trusted networks and trusted information will actually get into the healthcare system as well. I'm not sure that it will be something like the current blockchain, because it's too complicated and takes too much energy, but it will probably be a reduced form of this type of blockchain. But it will still be something where you can trust the network and can trust the information rather than trusting Facebook or somebody else who is controlling the information. AI obviously as well. So these are the things that I think where technology will help us dramatically in the future in healthcare, and probably something you should very strongly consider. How many of you know how to program? What is the programming language you use? What? Python. Python is very good. I happen to know, I haven't programmed anything for 30 years, but Gesundheit. And then then I started doing a little Python program because it's also used for AI. Please, everybody learn a language, and everybody actually get to know AI. You don't need to be an AI expert, but you should know of roughly how it works, and roughly how it's put together, and roughly what the segments are. There's plenty of online programs you can do that teach you that in a fairly short period of time. And I would really advise for every one of you to do this. It certainly doesn't hurt. And you will use it probably in the future in anything you do anyway. Jumping up, I said. So. Shake, right? So what are we talking here? What are we seeing?
So it resembles a hat.
What is it?
Hat.
A hat. Okay, with like some form of jewelry on it or something.
Oh.
Anything else? No, it's not. What?
Looks like a million to me.
A million.
Minion.
I don't know what a minion is. Oh, oh, the little. Okay, no, it's not it either.
Somebody is looking into a.
Somebody's looking
All right, I'll solve it. Cat eyeing in a mouse hole. From the mouse perspective, right? Okay? So now I want to give you some negative examples. Or some examples. I'm going particularly for the ones that here want to work for big companies. I want to give you a little bit of a thinking process of a big company. So, I always look at, and you have put down on the problem areas, you have put down a lot of diagnosis, and I agree that diagnosis is a very important thing, because without proper diagnosis, you cannot do proper therapy decisions. So, absolutely understood. The question is, how good does diagnosis have to be? And what does it help you to improve diagnosis if it has no therapy consequence? So I give you a quick example. What are this? So everybody knows CT scanners. So what's the fastest CT scanner these days? Anybody know? How many rows do you know that CT scanners have rows now? Detector rows, right? And every row is a slice. So how many slices does a CT scanner have these days? The top one. How many? 128, but it's not the top. No. It's a good one, but it's okay. You're not that far off. It's 320. So let's use 256 because that's an easier number. Do you know what the rotation speed is? How often does it go around? It's like shh, right? So how often? "30 times per second." Now, anybody mechanical engineer here can calculate what the forces would be of a 2-ton device turning 30 times? Unbelievable. You would not be able to hold it. You would have to put that screw 10 meters down, otherwise the thing would flow away. So it's about 2 to 3 times per second. Still very fast. So let's use 2 times, just for the heck of it. And how big is the heart? Like this, right? Maybe this? So maybe 10 to 15 centimeters. So these slices we're talking about were 1 millimeter slices. So what I do right now is I do 256 times 2. I do 500, round it up, 500 slices per second. Divide by millimeters. So how many centimeters do I cover? If it's a 1 millimeter slice, you divide it by 10, you have centimeters, right? So it'd be 50 centimeters in 1 second. So I cover the heart 5 times in 1 second. What's the heartbeat? 1 per second, roughly. I could cover the heart 5 times in 1 second. And even if I only take the heartbeat goes like this, there's this phase where it's relatively quiet. Let's say that's a quarter of the time period. So I need 250 milliseconds to cover the heart. Basically, my heart is covered with this device. Nothing, no motion artifact at all. So can anybody tell me why I have to become faster? What for? And can anybody tell me why I have to get a resolution of less than 1 millimeter?
better accuracy.
Yeah, but why? What for?
What if a person has tachycardia? Then the difference will actually be less.
Yeah, but then you give him some medication to slow the heartbeat down. So what do you need more than 1 millimeter resolution? What for? What clinical problem could you analyze with this? The what? But did you see that with 1 millimeter? Yeah. Maybe there is even something. I don't know that there is something because people are not asking for more because they seem to be quite happy. But you have to ask yourself, what are you going to do with this more resolution? Now in the car, more horsepower is always good, right? Really? If you can only drive 80? So ask yourself what is really needed rather than what can you do. And right now they have actually stopped increasing the CTs because there's no more need for doing this. The innovation is actually put into the software. You know that you have to slow the CT down for certain applications because when you get an IV dye, contrast media, the dye moves with the heartbeat, right? So it moves in the blood. And the CT scanner is faster than the dye. So you have to slow the CT scanner down. What I'm trying to get to is, how much does excellent diagnosis help you if the therapeutics are not changed? I usually typically use the example of breast cancer in women or prostate cancer in men because they're the most prevalent cancers anyway. So I find a 0.5 millimeter tumor, hopefully will never happen, right? But we'll find a 0.5 millimeter tumor in your breast. What is the therapeutic consequence of this? What do you want me to do? I tell you, I'm really sorry you have a 0.5 millimeter tumor. What are you telling me? Do something about it. Get it out, right? Can you find a 0.5 millimeter tumor? Pretty impossible to find. It's soft tissue. The breast moves. You don't even know where the 0.5 millimeter was. You just saw a little spot there. It's not really doing anything. You can't do anything about it, or at least not much. What you could do is you could cut out 5 millimeters just to be sure you cover it. Do you want me to cut out so much more? But how much happier are you now that you know that you have a 0.5 millimeter tumor than before? Not at all. You're pretty damn unhappy. You got the point too? Technology gives you information that sometimes doesn't do anything therapeutical but makes you sad and makes you worried. Because now what she's going to do, next year she's going to go again and then again and again and just see what happened. She's worried. And every time she goes to the doctor, she's worried she gets a bad result. I'm not saying that we should not have diagnosis. I'm just saying it should have a therapeutic effect. Same thing goes with MRI. Sometimes we find tumors that we can't do anything about. How helpful is that? Prostate. We have changed the prostate completely around. Now you actually look at man's prostate and you look at the tumor and you say, yeah, there's a tumor there. And then you don't do anything. You basically say, come back next year, we'll check it again. Because as soon as they call it the Gleason score, if the Gleason score is below a certain level, the aggressiveness of the tumor, it has not spread yet, they say, what is the point of sticking a needle in and getting a biopsy? It's not changing anything. So I'm trying to put into your heads too is please think about what certain things will do and what the effect is. And diagnosis is always the pre-requirement for therapy. But always advanced diagnosis does not necessarily always help you change your therapy. I'll give you some examples later on. So the question you should ask yourself, why do we actually need diagnosis if we could prevent something from ever happening? So that's more like the preventative part, right? And you should ask yourself, and that's actually coming from me, who is living in a very developed nation that can afford just about anything. I'm thinking about how can I actually make sure that we are not continuing developing this ultra expensive stuff, which gives us more diagnostic capability that nobody needs because nobody's going to do anything with it anyway. But our healthcare system and our people demand it. But it's not going to change anything in healthcare quality, and it's not going to change anything on therapeutic efficacy. This one is cool. I hope there's a video coming. Let's just see if the video is coming. No, it's not coming. Sorry. I typically have a video because I have actually visited this center. It's in Boston, the Amigo Suite. It's at Brigham Women's Hospital and Massachusetts General Hospital. I have it on the other side. I could show. It doesn't really matter. So you walk. I have a cell phone then, and I walk in through this door up there on top. So I'll come in here, and then you see all this equipment, which you don't see right now. There's all kinds of monitoring equipment hanging there. Brain Lab. This is a company we work with in Munich. And then on the right side, there's a 3 Tesla MRI hanging on the ceiling. When you need it, it beams. It just moves over, right? And on the other side, you have a PET CT scanner. It's all from Siemens, so we Germans love this. It's in Boston, right? It's all German equipment in there. And then I asked, this is Strager, also a German company for anesthesia equipment. Again, there's Brain Lab from Munich for navigation, et cetera, et cetera. Weirdly enough, the combination of this is done by a company called Imbris, which is a Canadian company. So this is really cool, right? And you should say, yes, it's really cool. But I asked you the question. Does anybody know how much this cost? Idea? I have no idea what that is, but how much? $10 to $15 million. Probably, maybe a little more even, I don't know. But you're probably not far off. So how many of those are installed in the world? This one. That's it. So not even the advanced Germany has one installed. And what is it good for then? Let me ask a different question. How many of you have been on Mount Everest? Nobody. Why do you think people climb Mount Everest? Because they can. And why do you think they built this? Because they can. This is kind of like my opinion. I'm not entirely sure that that's true, but there's only one being bought, so I think that probably is. We are Massachusetts, we are Harvard, right? We can afford, we built one of those. And we install it. Now, I asked them whether they would use it as maybe as a gold standard. So it can't get any better than that, right? And then you compare and build maybe devices that are significantly lower cost, cheaper, smaller, and you compare it to that. No, they don't do that. But I thought it was a good idea if you would do that, because then it would make sense. You have this best of the best, and then you compare whatever you build to it and say, wow, I'm at 95%, but it only costs $5, I do, or 50 or 500. Then I think it would make sense. The other thing is really cool. We have this Brain Lab system, we have this anesthesia equipment, we have monitoring equipment. Do you think that all these things talk to each other? They're all connected. Well, I can give you the answer, no, they don't. So, in essence, that happens if the anesthesia equipment, you have to have a special person running that one. What happens if the special person is run over by a car in the morning? Can you use the entire room? No, you can't. The complexity here adds a lot of people, adds a lot of added knowledge, very complicated to entertain, very complicated to use, extremely expensive, looks cool. There's tons of publications they made with this one, but do you believe it will ever be installed in the rural hospital in wherever in India? No, it will not. You will have to completely change your thinking process. So the job for you would be, do something that is 90% as good and 1,000 times cheaper. That would be a good one. That one would be installed. Yeah, it's not 100% as good, but it's at 90%. It's pretty damn close. So I would ask you the same thing that I did before. What is the purpose of this one? Please ask, and we don't have to do this right now, but this is what I would like you to do, is to think about what is the burning problem that I try to solve with this? Because I don't think they have a burning problem to solve. They just did it because they could do it. I have another example, I think. This is the coolest thing now that's coming in Germany. We're actually combining an MRI. Sorry, I don't really do anything except for being. So we're combining an MRI system with a linear accelerator. So can anybody already tell me what a burning problem would be that I solve with that? Soft tissue motion, maybe. But I have in the newer systems, the normal linear accelerator, I have CT scanners included. I could maybe get this too, but I have a little less radiation. Is that really an issue because I radiate them anyway? You know, it's a really tricky question. What is the benefit? But you need to have a linear accelerator which actually goes into the ground. It's a huge construction process. And then I set the MRI in the middle, the linear accelerator around. So we're talking about easy $6 to $8 million for this equipment. Now, I always say, what does an MRI cost? $1 million. What does a linear accelerator cost? $1 million. What do both together cost? $6. It's a little weird, right? A little difficult to understand. And so anyway, so what I thought was funny is that you cannot read this, and I will read it to you in a second. The CEO of Philips Healthcare, which makes the MRI, said, I have to get even closer to this, together with our partners, all leaders in radiation therapy delivery, we are convinced, right, that the integrated MRI-guided radiation therapy system has the potential to become a game changer in cancer care on a global scale. So, just listen to this, a game changer, global scale. Global scale does include India, right? Game changer means everybody who deals with cancer should have one of these systems installed. Now, the guy from Electa, who was making the radiation therapy system, says, and he's, by the way, not the president anymore, because I know the new president, we expect that high-field MRI-guided radiation therapy will become the standard of care within the next 10 years. That was 2 years ago, so 8 more years, and it's standard of care. Standard of care means everybody who deals with radiation and everybody who deals with cancer has to have one of those installed. I mean, in all honesty, are they kidding? Is that a joke? This is what big companies think. And they basically say that if we add performance of one MRI and the linear accelerator, which maybe has a 50% benefit, we can actually charge 3 times as much. I don't believe that. So these are the things that big companies do. They think incremental. They just add things, put it together, make it more complex, more complicated, charge a hell of a lot more money, and believe people will buy it. And you know what? Probably the Germans will buy it. Or some of them at least. So in India, maybe not, because you're smarter probably, and you don't have the money, and because of that, you're smarter at the moment. But we are doing incremental stuff. And very difficult to convince me that that is the right way to do it. So think about the burning problem you're trying to solve. I don't think you solve it with that. Try to understand what the pains and gains are, what the jobs to be done are, and try to see whether this device can solve it. I doubt that it can. So I think I'm actually almost done. Let's just see. No, I wanted to, maybe I do play the, do we have, how much time do we have? Do you want to play the game now or next, or Monday? Monday, why am I not surprised? Just that, damn it, I'm almost finished here, so now we can go home. All right, so your job is, for next time, I think I may just jump over that quickly and see what else is coming. It doesn't matter that you... Homework, remember the homework? Later on when you go out, you use your pencil, your pen, and mark the ones that you like, that you think are the best. Everybody has 5 votes or 7 votes, I don't really care, 5 to 7. And you vote the ones that you like the best. And if you like one really good, you can give it 5 votes before you go out, right? Everybody's going to do that. Promise? Yes. 1, 2, 3? Yes. This is what we're going to do. Walk around. I advise you to do this today before you go, or tomorrow before you sit down here. No, you have to be here, otherwise you can't look at it. But before you actually sit down, just to walk around, get some maybe additional ideas. So we will next time search a little bit more, but this is about it. So you should actually have some ideas by next time, by Monday. And I think that's it. So future will, as a final one, please think about the technology in healthcare as precise as possible, of which you will believe will be around in 10 years for sure. But it's not around for sure now. And then we'll use this as a discussion basis in your groups to start playing this game. Okay? Have a good Sunday.